Before I tell you anything else, I want you to understand something. I should not be here. There were moments in my life when I genuinely believed my story was over. I believed I had messed up too badly, hurt too many people, lost too much, and gone too far for anything to ever be repaired. But God had a different plan. And when I look back over my life now, I don't just see the mistakes I made, I see the hand of God. I see moments where I should have been lost forever, but somehow another door opened. I see people God put in my life exactly at the right moments. I see prayers that I didn't even know were being prayed. And I see a God who never stopped pursuing me, even when I spent years running in the opposite direction. So this is my testimony. This is the story of how Jesus has been working in my life, from a little boy who knew about God, to a young man who ran as far away from him as he possibly could, to a father, husband, and a man in recovery who is just learning every single day what it means to put God first. And I want to tell you this story because maybe you're listening right now, and maybe you're in a place where you think you're too far gone. Maybe you've made mistakes. Maybe you've hurt people. Maybe you've lost your family. Maybe you're battling addiction. Maybe you're struggling with depression. Maybe you're sitting there wondering if God could possibly still want anything to do with you. I want you to hear my story, because if God could keep reaching for me, He could reach for you too. I grew up in a Christian family. Both sides of my family were Christians. I had pastors in my family. I grew up hearing about God, hearing about Jesus, going to Sunday school, going to church, learning Bible stories, and being surrounded by people who loved the Lord. I remember being prayed over. I remember speaking about God, and even though I didn't understand everything back then, there was something inside me that knew God was real. I knew Jesus was real. I believed the Bible. I knew right from wrong. But I was also a very active little boy. I was always looking for something. I always felt like I wasn't satisfied. There was this restlessness inside me that I didn't know how to explain. As I got older, that restlessness became something much more dangerous. I started making choices that took me further and further away from the God I already knew. I started using drugs at a young age, and that's one of the things that's difficult for me to explain when I look back, because I never stopped believing God was real. I wasn't somebody who suddenly decided God didn't exist. I knew what I was doing was wrong. I knew what the Bible taught. I knew who Jesus was, but I was choosing something else. And that's the important part of my testimony, because knowing about God and actually surrendering your life to Him are two very different things. I knew about Him, but I wasn't living for Him. As a teenager, the drug use got worse. I got involved with the wrong people. I wanted to fit in. I wanted to be accepted. I wanted the money, the reputation, and the feeling that came with being around people who I thought seemed powerful. I made decisions because I wanted to belong, and eventually, those decisions caught up with me. I got involved in a serious situation with someone who was well known in the criminal world in my hometown. I was trying to prove myself. I was trying to be somebody, and instead, I ended up becoming afraid. There were accusations made against me that weren't true, and because of that, people involved, I found myself being threatened and attacked. I was jumped. I was afraid to go anywhere alone. I was constantly looking over my shoulder. Imagine being a teenager and living with that kind of fear. But instead of turning toward God, I went deeper into the very things destroying me. My addiction got worse. My decisions got worse. And eventually, I became a father at 17. I was still basically a kid myself, and suddenly I had a kid. I didn't know how to handle it. I had no way to handle it. I got married young, and eventually that marriage ended after having our second boy, Tyler. And instead of using that pain, I used it as a reason to turn toward God. I went even deeper into addiction and drug dealing. I was trying to support my addiction, and my entire life was becoming a cycle. I would make a bad decision. That decision would create another problem. That problem would lead to another bad decision. And before long, I didn't even recognize the person I had became. Eventually, I reached a point where I knew I couldn't keep going. I checked myself into a mental health hospital. I spent several weeks there, and during that time, something happened I will never forget. I had an encounter with God. I felt Him speaking to my heart. I can't explain it perfectly with words, but I knew something was different. For a moment, I felt like my life could actually change with God. I felt like there was still hope. I felt like maybe God wasn't finished with me. And when I left, I genuinely believed I was going to get my life back on track. But then I stepped back into the world, and slowly, I drifted yet again. That's another lesson I've learned. Sometimes we can have a powerful moment with God, but if we don't actually surrender our lives to Him and change the things we're doing, we can find ourselves right back where we started. I drifted, got involved with another relationship, and eventually, my son Jaden was born. I wanted to make that relationship work. I wanted to be a father. I wanted to have a family, but my addiction was still controlling me. Over the next couple years, everything continued getting worse. Eventually, both of us were struggling with addiction, and then something happened that broke me. We decided to split up, and I lost my son Jaden to social services. My older boys were also no longer in my care. I lost my children, I lost my relationships, and I'd lost myself. And yet, even then, God wasn't finished. After Jaden was taken into care, I tried to get my life together. About 50 days after losing him, I was able to get him back into my care full time. I was with my now wife, Ashley, at the time. We just started dating, and we needed to get out of town. We wanted a fresh start. We wanted to protect Jaden. We wanted to get away from the people and circumstances that had become part of our lives. But there was a problem. I owed people money. A lot of money. And I had become involved in things that made it dangerous for me to simply walk away. But we still left our hometown and moved across the island. I finished schooling for heavy equipment mechanics and eventually got a job in Port aux Basques. We were about 8 hours from home. I thought distance would fix everything. I thought if I moved far enough away, I could outrun my past. But you can't outrun yourself, and you definitely can't outrun the consequences of your choices. My past followed me, and fear followed me, addiction followed me, and most importantly, I was still separated from God. I was trying to build a new life without the one who could actually give me a new life. Eventually, information about my past came to the attention of Child and Family Services. Jaden was taken from me yet again, and this time, he ended up being placed many hours away in a foster home. I was devastated. I was already struggling with everything that's been happening. Now my son is gone again. I remember feeling like a complete failure. I wanted to be a father. I wanted to protect my children, but everywhere I turned, it seemed like I was losing them. Eventually, we decided to move back towards central Newfoundland so I could be closer to Jaden in foster care. And on the way home, we were stopped by police for something completely unrelated. During the stop, they discovered something that would change my life. I was desperate. I begged them to let me continue because I was supposed to see my son that evening for the first time in weeks, and somehow they allowed me to continue with a promise that I would appear when I was required. Looking back now, I believe God was protecting me because that day I was in such a dark place that I had been planning to end my life after I seen him that weekend. I reached a point where I didn't believe anything could be fixed. I didn't believe I could get my children back. I didn't believe I could repair my life. I believed I was a failure, but God didn't see the ending I saw. He saw something I couldn't see. He saw a future. After seeing Jaden, I didn't know what to do next. Ashley and I decided to leave Newfoundland and go to Moncton, New Brunswick. We thought maybe I could start over there. We didn't have much, and when we arrived, the place we thought we were going to stay wasn't available anymore. So for several weeks, we were homeless. We were living in my car. It was September. Some nights were getting cold. We had nowhere to go. I remember trying to figure out how we were going to survive. We went to a shelter looking for help, but they wouldn't keep us together, and we were afraid because we were alone in a place we didn't know anybody. So I came up with a new plan. I would get a job, We would shower at the YMCA. We'd find cheap places to stay whenever we could afford them. We would use whatever money we had to survive until I could get enough income to get us a place. Eventually, I got a job at the Homestead restaurant in Riverview, and I will never forget those people. They didn't know the whole story because I couldn't tell them everything. I was afraid of getting in trouble, but they helped me. They gave me opportunities. They helped me financially when they could. They treated me like a human being. I really look back now and see that God was using them, and it was very, very big blessing. We eventually got a little room in an apartment. We had a vehicle. We had everything we could need, but we were slowly building a life. From the outside, it might have looked like things were getting better, but inside, I was empty. I was separated from my children and my family, and most importantly, I was separated from God. There came another moment when I didn't think I could continue. I was living away from family, away from my children. I felt trapped. I felt like everything I had built was going to fall apart. I reached another point where I was thinking about ending my life. I want to be careful how I tell you about this because I don't want to glorify or explain the details of it. I don't want anybody to listen to this to learn a new method. But I need you to understand how hopeless I felt. I believe everybody would be better without me. I believed I had destroyed my life beyond repair. And while I was sitting there in the darkness, something happened. One of my aunts reached out to me and messaged me, and we hadn't been talking regularly, but she reached out and told me essentially not to do anything stupid. She reminded me that I was loved. She reminded me that this could be fixed and that timing was unbelievable. I remember sitting there thinking, why now? And for the first time, I started asking myself a question. Maybe I'm still here for a reason. Maybe this isn't the end. Maybe God hasn't abandoned me. Maybe there's something He still wants me to do. And that message was another moment where I believe God used somebody to keep me alive. Not long after that, my parents had reached out. They told me how much they loved me. They told me how badly they wanted me to get my life back and how much they missed me, and something inside me changed. I woke up the very next morning and made a decision. I was going home. I was going to face everything. I was going to turn myself in. I was going to stop running. Ashley and I made our way back to Newfoundland, and when I got home, I turned myself in. I didn't know what was going to happen, and I was terrified. But because I surrendered and told the truth, people were willing to work with me. I ended up avoiding jail time, and I received a fine and probation. And that day, something else happened. I surrendered my life. Not perfectly or magically, but I made a decision. I was done using drugs. June 30th, 2019, that is the day I got sober, and I haven't touched drugs since. But getting sober wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning. I went and stayed with my parents on their new hobby farm in Norris Arm, and honestly, that year helped save my life. I had time to breathe and think. I had time to start going to church. I started working on my relationship with my children and God. I started rebuilding trust, and eventually I was baptized. I was learning that recovery wasn't just about removing drugs from my life. I needed to rebuild everything. My relationship with God, my children, and my family. My understanding of who I was, and my understanding of what it meant to be a man, a husband, and a father. Then we discovered something else. While Ashley and I had been in Moncton, she had become pregnant. She was about 10 weeks pregnant when we found out, and I was terrified. I was still trying to put my life back together. I didn't know how my family was going to react, but I knew one thing: this baby was a blessing, and we decided we were going to have him. His name is Jonah. Eventually, I told my parents and my grandparents. It wasn't easy. I had to tell them that Ashley was pregnant and that we were planning to build a new life together. But my family helped us. Our pastor helped us. We went through marriage counseling. Ashley began learning about Jesus and eventually gave her life to Christ. And then something incredible happened. We planned a wedding in about only 2 weeks. Our families came together. They helped us financially and physically. They helped make it possible. And Ashley and I got married. We moved into our own place. We had Jonah, and eventually Jaden came back to our lives as well and started living with me full time again. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was getting my family back. God was restoring things I thought permanently were destroyed. But here's something I want to be honest about. Even after all of that, I still drifted. I stayed sober, but my relationship with God wasn't always where it needed to be. I learned that sobriety doesn't automatically make you spiritually healthy. You can remove the drugs and still have things inside you that need healing. You can rebuild your finances and still have an empty heart. You can have a family and still need Jesus. That's where I found myself. And somewhere in the middle of all this, God gave our family another incredible blessing. Our baby girl, Evelyn Lily, was born. She's 3 years old now, and her name means more to me than I could ever explain. We named her Evelyn Lily after both of my grandmothers, two women who meant so much to me, and the hardest part is both of them passed away before I ever felt like I had truly became the man they could be proud of. That hurts. Because when I look back at the person I used to be, I think about the people who loved me before I ever knew how much I needed their love. I wish they could have seen me sober. I wish they could have seen me become a husband. I wish they could have seen me become the father I'm trying to be. I wish they could have seen the life God was slowly rebuilding. But unfortunately, they aren't here to see it. So when I look at my little girl and say her name, Evelyn Lily, I think about them. I think about where I came from. I think about how far God has brought me. And I think about how precious life really is. Because there was a time when I didn't even believe I would live long enough to see this. There was a time when I didn't think I'd ever have a future. And now I have this little girl running around my house. I get to hear her laugh. I get to watch her grow. I get to be her dad. Every time I look at her, I'm reminded that God wasn't finished writing my story. Even though I wasn't where I needed to be spiritually at that point, God was still blessing me. He was still giving me reasons to keep moving forward. He was still putting pieces of my life back together. And looking back at it now, I realized something. God was still working in my life even during the seasons I wasn't working on my relationship with Him. I had drifted away. I was sober, but I wasn't where I needed to be with Jesus. I had a family, and I was still trying to figure out how to lead my family spiritually, and eventually the struggles of life started becoming heavy again. Financial pressures, stress, marriage struggles, parenting struggles, trying to understand what's happening with Jonah. We were experiencing financial stress. There was fighting. There was difficulties at home. We started struggling to understand what was going on with Jonah. Eventually we learned he has ADHD and ODD, and we're still working through other possibilities and trying to understand exactly what he needs. There have been appointments and wait lists. There have been different treatments and medications. There have been days where we looked at each other and wondered, how are we going to do this? And I started realizing something. I can't do it by myself. I need Jesus. Not just when everything is falling apart. I need Him every day. One day I was scrolling through TikTok and I came across somebody doing praise and worship and talking about the Bible, and something hit me and I thought, I really need this. I need Jesus at the center of my life. I need to pray. I need to seek Him. I need Him in my marriage. I need Him in my parenting. I need Him in my recovery. I need Him in my finances. I need Him when I'm happy. I need Him when I'm frustrated. I need Him when I understand what's happening, and I need Him when I don't. And since then, I've been working on rebuilding that relationship with God, and I can tell you honestly, I'm still a work in progress, but I'm not the same man I used to be. When I look back at my life, I can see things I wish I could change. I wish I could go back and make different decisions and take some of the pain I caused my family away. I wish I could protect my children from the consequences of my addiction, and I wish I had listened sooner. I wish I had surrendered sooner, but I can't go back. What I can do is use what God has brought me through and take the pain and use it for purpose. I can take my mistakes and warn other people. I can take my story and point people towards Jesus. My story isn't really about how terrible I was. It's about how good God is. It's not about how strong I became. It's about how God kept me alive when I didn't even have the strength to do it myself. It's not about how I saved myself. I couldn't save myself. Jesus is the reason I'm here. That's why I've started sharing my testimony online. That's why I talk about recovery. That's why I talk about mental health. That's why I talk about fatherhood and faith. And that's why I share my life. Because I know somebody watching is feeling the same way as I once felt. Maybe you're sitting in your car or your bedroom, or maybe you're scrolling through your phone at 2 a.m. Maybe nobody knows what you're going through. Maybe everybody thinks you're okay, but inside, you're falling apart. I want you to know that God sees you. He hasn't forgotten you, and your worst chapter doesn't have to be your final one. Look at me. I was a teenager making terrible decisions. I became addicted. I lost my children and relationships. I lived in fear. I became hopeless. I ran from my problems. I wanted to die. And yet I'm standing here today telling you that Jesus never stopped pursuing me. If he can reach me, he can reach you. So if you're watching this right now and you're struggling, I want to talk directly to you. If you're addicted, I want you to know that there is hope. If you've lost your family, there is hope. If you've made terrible decisions, there's hope. If you've hurt people, there's still a road forward. That doesn't mean there won't be consequences. There were consequences for my decisions. God didn't erase every consequence of my past, but he gave me strength to face them. And if you're struggling with thoughts of suicide, please hear me. Your story is not finished. I know what hopelessness feels like. I know what it feels like to believe that everybody would be better off without you. But I'm living proof that what looks impossible to you today can look completely different tomorrow. Don't make a permanent decision based on a temporary chapter. Reach out, tell somebody, talk to your friends and family, talk to somebody you trust, and most importantly, talk to God. Because you don't have to come to Jesus with your life perfectly cleaned up. I didn't. I came broken. I came addicted. I came scared and ashamed. I came with a mountain of mistakes behind me, and Jesus still wanted me. That's grace. Today, I'm 7 years sober. I'm a husband and a father. I'm here, I'm alive, I'm rebuilding, I'm learning, and I'm praying. And I'm trying every day to put Jesus first. I don't claim to have everything figured out. I still have difficult days. I still get frustrated. I still make mistakes. But now I know where to turn. And I want my children to grow up knowing something that took me far too long to understand. Jesus isn't somebody you only need when your life falls apart. He's the foundation you build your life around. I spent years looking for fulfillment in drugs, money, acceptance, reputation, and everything the world told me would make me happy, and none of it was enough. I always needed more. But Jesus began teaching me something different. The world tells you, get more. Jesus says, come to me. The world says, prove yourself. Jesus says, follow me. The world says, hide your failures. But Jesus says, bring them to me. And that's what I'm trying to do now. I don't know exactly what God has planned for the rest of my life, but I know what I want my life to be about. I want Jesus to be first and be a better husband, a better father. I want to be there for my children. I want to be an example of what recovery can look like. I want to encourage men who are struggling and talk about mental health. I want to tell people that there is a life after addiction. And most importantly, I want to point people towards Jesus because I've tried life without him. I know where that road took me, and I don't ever want to go back. And if I can avoid you going there too, I would love that. I've removed things from my life that no longer represent who I want to be. I've changed the music I listen to and what I consume. I've changed what I want my life to represent because I don't want to spend the rest of my life building something for the world. I want to build something for God. And I want my children to look back in one day and say, Dad wasn't perfect, but he loved Jesus and he loved his family and he never ever stopped trying. And here's the thing, my testimony isn't finished. This isn't the end of my story. God is still working. He's still teaching. He's still working in my marriage, and He's still working in my family. He's still working in me. We're praying for Jonah. We're praying for understanding and patience. We're praying for healing. We're praying for wisdom as parents, and we're trusting God one day at a time. And that's what faith looks like to me now. It's not pretending everything is perfect. It's saying, Jesus, I don't know what tomorrow looks like, but I know you're going to be there. I've spent years trying to control everything. Now I'm learning to surrender, and that might be the biggest change of all. So if you've made it this far, thank you for listening to my story. But most importantly, I want you to understand the message behind it. Jesus loves you, not the cleaned up version of you, not the version that has everything figured out, not the version that never made mistakes. You, right now, wherever you are, whatever you've done, whatever you're carrying, there is grace, forgiveness, there is hope. There is a God who can take the life that looks completely destroyed and begin rebuilding it piece by piece. He did it for me. He gave me another chance. He gave me my life back. He gave me the opportunity to become a father again. He gave me a wife, and He gave me children. He gave me a reason to wake up, and most importantly, He gave me my recovery and brought me back to Jesus. So I'm not standing here telling you that I'm some perfect Christian. I'm standing here as a broken man who has experienced grace. I'm standing here as a recovering addict, a father, a husband, a man who has made more mistakes than I can count, but a man who knows that Jesus is real, and I know that because I've experienced His grace in my own life. I should not be here, but I am. And every morning I wake up, there's another reminder that God isn't finished with me. So if you're struggling today, don't give up. If you've fallen, get back up. If you've walked away from God, turn around. And if you've lost hope, hold on. If you don't know Jesus, I encourage you to seek Him. Open your Bible, pray, find a good church, talk to somebody who follows Christ, and give Him a chance, because the same God who met me in my darkest moments is reaching for people every day. My name is Jonathan. This is my story. This is my testimony. And above everything else, this is the story of what Jesus has done in my life. And I'm believing with all my heart, the best chapters are still ahead. If you like this video or can relate, please like and subscribe down below. It would help me and my family immensely, and I want to get this video out to the people that need to hear it. Thank you so much, and God bless.